I never liked doing laundry at night, but sometimes life doesn't give you much of a choice. That evening, around 9 p.m., I had no clean clothes left and a busy schedule ahead. The laundromat near my apartment was usually quiet, especially on weekdays, so I figured it would be a quick in-and-out task. As I pulled into the nearly empty parking lot, I noticed just two other cars. The bright fluorescent lights inside cast a cold glow through the large glass windows. I grabbed my laundry basket, pushed open the glass door, and was greeted by the familiar hum of washers and dryers. The place smelled like detergent and fabric softener, comforting in a way. Only two people were inside. One was an older man folding his clothes near the back. The other was a tall man in his late 30s, wearing a worn-out hoodie, sitting in the corner. He wasn't doing laundry. He wasn't even pretending to. He was just sitting there, watching. I told myself not to overthink it. I loaded my clothes into a washer, inserted my quarters, and took out my phone to scroll while I waited. A few minutes passed. The older man finished folding his clothes, packed up, and left. Now it was just me and the guy in the hoodie. I tried not to look at him, but I could feel his eyes on me. Every time I glanced up, he was staring. Not moving, not blinking much. Just staring. My stomach twisted, but I kept my face neutral. Maybe he was waiting for someone. Maybe he was just a little weird. Not necessarily dangerous. But then he got up and walked closer. He pretended to look at the detergent vending machine, but I could feel his presence, uncomfortably close. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned back to my phone, pretending not to notice. "You come here often?" His voice was rough, almost amused. I froze. Every part of me wanted to ignore him, but I knew better. A man like this, one who watched, waited, then approached, wouldn't take kindly to being ignored. "Yeah," I muttered, keeping my response short. He stepped closer. "Never seen you here before." I forced a tight smile. "Guess our schedules never lined up." He let out a small chuckle. "Guess not." The washing machine hummed loudly, filling the silence. I gripped my phone, debating whether I should call someone. But what would I say? Some guy is being creepy in a laundromat? That wasn't illegal. Yet, my instincts screamed at me. The man moved again, leaning casually against the washer next to mine. "You live around here?" he asked. "Just passing through," I lied. He studied me, then smirked. "Smart answer. You're careful. I like that." A chill ran through me. He was testing me, seeing how much he could push. I forced a laugh, trying to act unfazed. "I just don't talk much when I'm doing laundry. Tired, you know?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I get that." Then without warning, he reached out, just slightly, toward my arm. I jerked back instinctively. His smirk widened. "Relax. Don't touch me." My voice was firm, sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. For a second, his face darkened. Then, just as quickly, he laughed, stepping back. No need to be rude. I was just being friendly. My pulse was racing. Every fiber of my being told me to get out, but my clothes were still in the washer. I glanced toward the security cameras in the corner, then toward the door. Would he follow me if I left? I made a decision. My laundry could wait. I grabbed my bag and walked straight to the front counter, where the laundromat's owner, Mr. Patel, was sitting behind a small desk. He looked up from his newspaper, surprised. "Everything okay?" he asked. "That guy over there," I whispered. "He won't stop watching me. He just tried to touch me. Can you check the cameras?" Mr. Patel's expression shifted from confusion to concern. He turned his head slightly, discreetly glancing at the man. "Stay here," he said firmly. Then he stood up and walked toward the man. I didn't hear what they said, but the man in the hoodie suddenly looked irritated. He scoffed, threw up his hands, and walked out the door. Relief flooded through me. "You did the right thing," Mr. Patel said once the man was gone. "Let's check the cameras, just in case." We went to the back room where he pulled up the security footage. As he rewound the footage, a lump formed in my throat. The camera had caught everything. The way the man had watched me from the moment I entered. The way he stood up as soon as the older man left. The way he moved closer, step by step, testing my boundaries. Then something even worse. A few minutes before I had noticed him, the footage showed him walking in circles around the laundromat, peering out the windows, checking the parking lot, checking if we were alone. I didn't hesitate. I dialed 911 and told them everything. The officer on the phone listened carefully and assured me someone would come by to take my statement. Mr. Patel offered to stay until the police arrived. I nodded, grateful. When the police finally arrived, I explained everything. They took my statement, reviewed the footage, and ran a check based on Mr. Patel's description of the man. After a few minutes, one of the officers frowned. "We know this guy." I felt my stomach drop. "Who is he?" The officer hesitated. "We can't give out details, but he's been involved in other incidents. He usually watches women alone in public places. You were lucky you spoke up when you did." My hands went cold. "What happens now?" "We'll file a report, and if we find him, we'll bring him in for questioning. But in the meantime," the officer met my eyes, "be careful. If you see him again, call us immediately." I never went back to that laundromat alone again. For weeks, I felt like I was being watched, constantly checking over my shoulder, jumping at shadows. But the scariest part, they never caught him, and I never forgot his face. It was the fall of 2023, and I had a routine, laundry at 8 p.m. every week. But that night, work had kept me late, and by the time I got home, it was already pushing 10 p.m. I had no choice but to head to the nearest 24-hour laundromat, a 10-minute drive from my apartment. It wasn't my usual spot, but it was the only one open this late. The parking lot was almost empty, except for a single car parked near the entrance. The bright neon sign flickered above the glass doors. I stepped inside, greeted by the dull hum of washing machines and the faint scent of detergent. The place was mostly deserted, except for one other customer. A man sat in the corner, hunched over, staring at his phone. He looked to be in his mid-40s, wearing a faded hoodie and jeans. His posture was tense, his foot tapping rapidly against the tiled floor. Something about him felt off. But I brushed it off, telling myself I was just being paranoid. I chose a washing machine near the back, deliberately picking one that put some distance between me and the man. As I lifted the lid and started loading my clothes, a chill ran down my spine, a feeling that I was being watched. I shook it off as paranoia, but couldn't resist the urge to glance over my shoulder. Sure enough, the man had lifted his head from his phone. He wasn't just casually scanning the room, he was staring directly at me. His eyes, unblinking, locked onto me with an unsettling intensity. I inhaled deeply, forcing my hands to remain steady as I poured detergent into the machine. I didn't want to let on that I had noticed. Maybe he was just lost in thought. Maybe he wasn't actually staring at me, but at something else. Still, my instincts screamed otherwise. I slammed the lid shut and pressed the start button, trying to focus on the rhythmic hum of the machine. Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, pretending to check messages, using it as an excuse to avoid eye contact. But when I looked up again, my stomach twisted. He had moved. He was no longer sitting in the corner. Now he stood near the vending machines, positioned in a way that gave him a clear view of me. He wasn't getting a snack. He wasn't doing anything. Just standing, watching. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to keep my composure. Maybe he was waiting for someone. Maybe he was just socially awkward, but deep in my gut, I knew this wasn't normal. This wasn't coincidence. He was watching me. I sat down on one of the plastic chairs near my machine, trying to focus on my phone. The minutes dragged on. I could see the man in my peripheral vision, shifting from foot to foot, occasionally glancing at the door. Then he spoke. "You come here often?" His voice was raspy, like he hadn't spoken in a while. I looked up, forcing a polite smile. "Nah, first time here." He nodded slowly, as if processing my words. "Not many people do their laundry this late." "Yeah, well, busy schedule," I replied, hoping he'd get the hint and stop talking. He didn't. He took a step closer. "You live around here?" Alarm bells rang in my head. Something about his tone put me on edge. I kept my expression neutral, just passing through. His lips curled slightly, almost like a smirk. Smart. Always good to be careful. I didn't respond. I just nodded and looked back at my phone, hoping to end the conversation. He stood there for another few seconds before finally backing off. But I didn't relax. Something told me this wasn't over. I watched the minutes tick by, waiting for my clothes to finish washing. The man had returned to his seat but kept fidgeting. His eyes darted toward the entrance every so often, then back to me. Was he waiting for someone, or was he just waiting for the right moment? I decided to test him. I stood up and pretended to check the vending machine near the exit. His reaction was immediate. He tensed, his eyes following my every move. I wasn't imagining things. He was watching me. I felt my pulse quicken. My laundry still had a few minutes left in the cycle, but I didn't care. I had to get out of there. I casually grabbed my laundry bag, even though my clothes were still damp, and slung it over my shoulder. As I turned toward the door, I heard him shift behind me. Then, footsteps. I didn't turn around. I walked steadily toward the exit, but just as I reached the door, I saw movement in the reflection of the glass. He was following me. The cold night air hit me as I stepped outside. My car was only a few feet away. I reached into my pocket for my keys, my fingers trembling slightly. Then, his voice came again, this time from directly behind me. "Leaving so soon?" I spun around, my heart pounding. He stood a few feet away, hands shoved into the pocket of his hoodie, a strange grin on his face. The parking lot was empty. No witnesses, just me and him. "Yeah, I got what I needed," I said, trying to keep my voice even. He took a step closer. "You sure? Looks like your clothes are still wet." A lump formed in my throat. He had been paying attention, too much attention. I forced a smile. "I'll dry them at home." "Huh?" He nodded, but his eyes never left mine. "That's a shame. Could have had a nice chat while we waited." Every instinct screamed at me to get in my car. I took a slow step back, gripping my keys like a weapon. "Maybe another time." He tilted his head, then smirked. "Yeah, maybe." For a few weeks, I avoided that laundromat. The thought of running into him again made my skin crawl. But life gets in the way, and soon enough, I needed to do laundry again. Hoping that night had been a one-time thing, I returned. The moment I stepped inside, I froze. He was there, sitting in the same spot, hunched over his phone, as if he had never left, as if he had been waiting. His eyes lifted the second I walked in, and his lips curled into that same unsettling smirk. I didn't even bother pretending. I turned on my heel and walked straight back out. I never went back there again.